Hello and welcome to another GateDrop.com podcast. I'm Jonathan McCready. Joining me again is Andy McKinstry. Andy, let's get straight into this. Jeffrey Herlings, Jorge Prado. Oh my goodness. My heart was flying whenever Prado near endoed and potentially took Herlings with him about 3 laps before. And then in the finish, it all went wrong. KTM's worst fears realised. What were your thoughts?
Well, to be honest, it's anyone that watches MXGP every week. This has been coming. At times, it's been a miracle it hasn't happened sooner. But what a way for it to actually happen when it did happen. The checkered flag was actually out, and then they both end up in a heap on the deck. Don't think, even though you would have predicted Prado being involved in some sort of collision like that because of the way he's been riding this year. Obviously riding very defensive, which is nothing wrong with, but he doesn't like guys passing him full stop no matter who it is. So if he needs to, he will just move across from them. He's been doing that a lot this year. But for it to happen the way it did after the checkered flag went out, wow, absolutely crazy. Germany, I have to say, usually the racing isn't great there, but my goodness, it had so much drama at the weekend there. Unbelievable stuff. That again, you couldn't have predicted that happening.
Yeah, and I still can't get my head around why he went to his right off the finish jump. You would think that I know in Riola he did drift across to try and block Herlings in the race on the ground, but I still don't know if he went to block Herlings or send Herlings some sort of message because he won that race, or if he didn't realise Herlings was that close and that was just the line he took on purpose to celebrate the win. So I'm not sure whether to completely blame him or if it was sort of accidentally his fault. It's still strange to me that he would have won the race and then decided to cut Herlings off, especially in the air, because he's a professional rider. And if he knew as soon as you could see his reaction on the bike, whenever he realized what was about to happen, he tried to stop it. So I'm not sure if he just miscalculated the whole thing of how close Herlings was. It was definitely strange. But for Jeffrey Herlings, we landed on twice now in one season. And normally, even a small crash, he seems to get hurt. This time, yes, he hurt his knee a bit, but fortunately, he was able to ride. A bit of good luck amidst the bad luck for Jeffrey Herlings for once.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of last man standing this championship, and even Geiser and Herlings, who are first and second, have had injuries this year. Fevre, out of the championship contenders, is the one so far to have nothing go wrong, and he's probably crashed the most actually. But he's still only 8 points down, so it's chaos. And yeah, any other season, I think Herlings would be at home now, probably a bit depressed, but he should be happy to be injury free after being very, very unlucky, getting landed on twice. Nothing he could do, and yeah, obviously his knee was a bit painful in the second moto there. But I mean, we should all just be happy he's all right, and hopefully him, Geiser, Fevre, it's looking like it's between those three. Prado isn't completely out of it, but he's going to need to perform in France and not lose too many points. But hopefully those main three can stay injury free now between now and the end of the season. But the way this season's going, no doubt there'll be drama just around the corner. God knows what'll happen in France.
Yeah, and Herlings, the second moto, he definitely looked more detuned. So it wasn't really a surprise to say he had pain in his knee because he didn't look to have that extra wee bit of fight or aggression in it even at the start. Because Geiser made that amazing three rider pass in one turn, and Herlings was just behind him, and that put Geiser with Fevre, and the two of them broke away. Herlings was a bit more careful and took his time, but clearly, after what happened in that first moto, he was just glad to get away with the podium, still be in this championship, which you can completely understand. But for Jorge Prado, you had to feel sorry for him, at least I did anyway. He just rode maybe the best race of his life to pass Herlings back after leading, withstand the pressure from Herlings, take that win, and he was only 9 points back, right in the thick of this championship with a bit of momentum on his side with that win. And he didn't even have time to enjoy it. He had about 1 second before he realised what was about to happen, a mid-air collision. And then there was rumours he had broken his leg. Thankfully, it's not that bad. It looks like he might be able to ride in France, but 31 points back isn't ideal, especially with the way Geiser and Herlings are riding. They look like the guys that are going to win the motos. And Prado, as we saw, and even in the first moto, it's taken everything he has to win a moto at the minute. He's not able to just dominate. at 31 points back, he might need mistakes from the other two and hope that he can come back fully healthy and straight back into form in France.
Absolutely. And see the collision between Herlings and Prado. For those two, thank goodness it happened on the last lap. Imagine if that happened with a lap to go. Tim Geiser would be licking his lips right now. But yeah, so in that respect, at least the checkered flag was out and they got classified first and second. Obviously, Prado couldn't race the second moto, but it'll be interesting to see how bad the injury is. You know, they're probably not giving too much away at the moment and they'll reevaluate things before France, but it'll definitely be interesting to see what his speed's like there. But the one good thing about Prado is, you know, he's going to get very good starts, so he's able to position himself very well. So if he can fight through the first 20 minutes, hopefully he'll be all right, and maybe towards the end is when he'll start to feel it. But we're only speculating here. We don't actually know how bad it'll be, but it should be interesting. At least it looks like he'll be able to ride in France. That's the main thing, to sort of keep his hopes alive. And but yeah, as for Geiser and Herling, only 2 points in it now, which is crazy to think. I mean, 3 or 4 weeks ago, if you'd have told Jeffrey it'd be within 2 points of Geiser now, it'd have snapped your hand off. But actually, after having the red plate, it's just madness, really, the way the season's going. But due to the circumstances, I still think he'll be happy to be just racing because of the bad luck he's had and only to be 2 points down. But how good was Tim Geiser in that second moto, though? Superb riding. Obviously, we know Herlings wasn't 100%, so if he was, it would have been a lot closer. But I think he would have had to be absolutely on the limit to run or beat Geiser in that second moto because he looked superb.
Yeah, Tim was fantastic. I was more concerned. I thought maybe he'd have the speed back, but I wasn't sure the fitness would be there. And the first moto, he actually rode really well too, fifth up to third, but he was right on Herlings. At one point, it looked like he was going to be the guy to challenge Prado for the win, right on Herlings. Couldn't quite get him. And then Herlings seemed to dig deep and find some pace to go back after Prado. But that was even not looking at the crash at the end for drama. That was a really, really exciting moto. And then Tim dropped a wee back slightly at the end of that race. Wasn't quite on Herlings, couldn't make the pass. I thought maybe is that the fitness coming into play? But second moto, no, absolutely not. He made as I mentioned, that phenomenal pass on the first lap. He made his intentions clear. He wanted to go to the front this time, stalk Roman Fevre. Pass Fevre at exactly the same spot. So if you're Jackie Vimon or the Kawasaki guy, you're probably going to have a word with Roman for that. But Geiser looked like he was on a mission. He took that win, and for the momentum and for his mentality after dealing with that broken collarbone, probably for a minute thought his championship was over. To lose the red plate in Raiola and come back and get it back instantly again, he has to be really pleased with that. And it's probably better than he could have ever have imagined when he got up off the ground with a broken collarbone practicing before Raiola.
Absolutely. Mentally, it's very good for Geiser to end the weekend on such a high, and I agree with you actually. In that second moto, it did look like for all the world at one stage he was maybe going to win it, but then he dropped off at the very end, maybe with 10 minutes to go, and actually Fevre was all over him at the end. If the track had been a bit easier to pass, maybe he could have been fourth in that one, but he held on to third, and not quite sure what happened between motos or what it was down to, but I think the track being even rougher and even more technical than the first moto, which it was already technical, but I think that suited Geiser even more. And the way he was just standing on the pegs through all those ruts and bumps was really, really impressive. And they're the kind of tracks that you can associate Tim Geiser's riding with, and he's really at home in those kind of tracks.
Yeah, especially the slicker it gets too with the ruts. He seems to be good at the lines, but he's also so smooth and he's able to carry his speed. Fevre, you just felt had his chances, but Gajser was just that wee bit better when it really mattered. And even the first moto he got by Fevre, when Fevre looked like he had the speed to go after the KTMs. Second moto, Fevre was leading, and you never quite felt he had control of the race. You always felt it was in Geiser's hands to a point. Although, as you mentioned, the track was quite tough to pass, although maybe better than I've seen it in other years. It's always going to be quite tough to pass. I'm not always a big fan of the ruts, creating those ruts, but I think it actually didn't work out too bad this weekend. And Geiser, you still had to work for it, but he worked for it, made that move again to take the win. And for him, and I'm sure Honda, everybody's emotionally involved into this for the entire team. There's a lot of money on the line. And for Tim to come back to show his toughness, his mental resilience, and ability to dig deep and endure pain, he's kind of got his rewards there in Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on Febvre, he's starting to get very frustrating now, actually, because every week he has a speed, but it seems to be that he just can't pass riders this season. Obviously, Germany was hard to pass, but even on a normal track, it's a bit easier to pass than that. His whole race, he always seems to always get stuck behind Prado, and he just can't make a move. And then he gets that frustrated. The guys behind usually pass him. It's sort of a domino effect, but it's really frustrating because I think he actually has the speed. He's possibly as quick as anybody, bar maybe Herlings, when Herlings has that ridiculous speed that he has in the locker every now and again. But apart from that, I feel like Febvre has got the speed. It's just putting it all together to get these wins that he's going to need now. He's obviously very, very consistent and another podium, and he's still only 8 points off. But it's just he needs to start and learn how to pass riders. Really, I think if he can deal with that, and if he can make quick passes, he'll be able to pull away from the guys, and then that means he won't get past. But because he's having struggles passing riders, he's getting held up, and then the guys behind are able to make an attack on him, and it's pretty unforgivable for the second moto for the same pass from Geiser to work yet again. He definitely should have had that line covered, so he needs to have a look at that one and try and close the door in the future.
Yeah, and Febvre, when you look at it, he hasn't had any really bad motos, you would say. Tim hasn't actually no point scores either, but he did have that crash in Czech where he only got 6 points, and of course Sardinia, whereas his collarbone injury impeded his ability to get his usual results on only a 2-point score there in the first moto. But Febvre hasn't really had any of that. Herlings has lost 3 motos with his shoulder injury. Crowley has had 3 motos where he hasn't scored points, and Prado has had 2, I think. So everyone else has had their ups and downs and or injuries. Febvre's just had these wee crashes that have accumulated a points loss, but apart from that, he has actually been consistent, and that's what's keeping him in it. But everyone else has won more motos, especially Geiser and Herlings, when they're able to put those moto wins in, that you feel Febvre now is going to have to start to do if he really wants to push for this championship. Because barring a mistake for Geiser and Herlings again, which has pretty much kept Febvre in it, and Prado as well, he'd actually lost a couple more points to Prado in the first moto until that crash, which again has helped Febvre. So it seems to be as the consistency of Febvre going to outweigh the pace of Geiser and Herlings in terms of winning motos. Are they all going to come unstuck again? And Febvre will be able to run this consistent run of form without a lot of moto wins and still win the championship?
Yeah, well, you would say at the moment he's going to have to start winning, and I think he has got that in him, but he just needs to figure it out very quickly. It's quite hard to believe that he's actually only won 1 GP this year. Like, to me, he should have won more than that because, like I keep saying, he has got the speed, but they've only won 1 Lommel or one GP, and for it to be at Lommel is quite unbelievable, really. But it definitely will be interesting. But like I said earlier, plenty of racing left to go now, and the way it's going, it could be last man standing. So staying injury free could be a big part of the season. But fingers crossed, all of them can stay fit, and plenty of banging bars left in the season yet.
Next up, of course, is France. Febvre brilliant on hard pack, home Grand Prix. You would imagine that with the championship so tight, this would be the perfect time to get some momentum and take a 1-1 and beat Herlings and Geiser straight up with no issues. Maybe Prado as well, or even Crowley if he's feeling better after his injuries. But certainly the time for Febvre to strike is right now, and there's no better than the French Grand Prix.
Yeah, and I think he actually won a moto there in the international coming into this season, and Herlings was racing. So, he done it there. Why can't he do it this weekend? Obviously, it's GP and there's more pressure on the line, but he knows the track well. I'm expecting a slick hard pack track that suits Febvre down to the ground. So if he can get that whole shot again like he got in the second moto in Germany, why not? He just needs to figure out how to get the job done, really.
Just going back to KTM quickly, before Raiola, Caroli was very much in this championship. Prado was very much in the championship, and Herling was obviously very much in the championship. So you had three of the five riders on KTM, obviously Geiser, Honda, Febvre, Kawasaki. Now, after the last two or 3 weeks in Raiola and with what happened in Germany, they very nearly had all three potentially pretty much out of this championship. Caroli riding injured. He lost a lot of points again in Germany. So he's going to need a bit of a miracle now. Prado had the crash. He's 31 back. And it's only Herlings, fortunate not to be wrecked, who's second on 2 points with Geiser. But you would imagine that they would have had at least two of the top three places at this point, having three of the five championship challengers. But actually, it looks like it's Honda v Kawasaki v KTM now, 1, 2, 3 in the championship. And the Prado and Crowley look like they might just drop off now, which if you're Pit Barra, given what you've had to watch the last couple of weeks, and especially in Germany, you might be tearing your hair out a wee bit because it could now come down to no KTM championship despite having three of the top five going for the title.
Yeah, it hasn't been a good couple of GPs for Ducati, KTM, has it? Both riders getting stretchered off, one at each of the last two GPs. So thankfully the injuries aren't too bad, because it could have been a heck of a lot worse. You know, when the stretcher's out, it's obviously not good, but thankfully Caroli was able to ride a week later and win the Nations, but he's clearly not himself at the moment, and that's completely understandable under the circumstances. With Prado, we just need to wait and see what he's going to be like this weekend in France. And you know, if he can get a moto winner again or a podium, the door won't be completely closed for Prado. But yeah, like you said, Crowley 62 points down. He needs a couple of mini miracles, but you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Best of the rest this weekend was Paul's Jonas, and at times he was actually on the pace of the leaders again. Really impressive by him, fourth overall. And while we're on with Jonas, Brian Bogers as well, he showed some fantastic pace. He probably didn't get the results that he really deserved, eighth overall, but the speed was there as both free practice and time qualifying. He was right up there as well. So those two gas guys are riding really, really well at the minute. But Paul's Jonas back on form, fourth overall, and you would say pretty much on the speed of those top guys at certain points of the weekend.
Yeah, the gas guys never really got the start this weekend, so they didn't see the speed right at the front, but they both had very good weekends. PJ needed it because after Raiola, which you would have thought would have been a great track for him, he just didn't perform. He said himself he didn't turn up. So for him to go fourth overall in Germany, a type of track that on the 250 you wouldn't have really associated with him, but I was in Germany 2 years ago, and I think up until that stage he had his best moto finish with a second behind Geiser, if I remember rightly, in 2019. So it seems to be a track that suits him well. To go 6'4", fourth overall, really, really good. You'll believe if he can get a start, another podium could be just round the corner. And on Bodgers, really good. People forget that he didn't have an off season compared to the other riders. Even missed the first round of the championship, but lately he's been very consistent in the top 10, 9 7th at a track that he might have struggled with in the past. So nice to see him adapt that kind of track. And despite missing the first round, he's up to 11th in the championship. So he'll definitely be knocking on the door to push into that top 10 shortly, you would think, with the way he's riding.
And the two Yamaha guys, Sir and Coldenhoff, fifth and sixth overall. I saw Glenn said he wants a bit more, but it's all about progression for him because he's had a bit of a tough season in certain times. He feels he's started to feel what he needs to feel in the Yamaha and is coming back to some sort of form. Not a bad day for him, and also not a bad day for Jeremy Sear. But again, they're not quite on that top level. They're just slightly off that, but solid nonetheless.
Yeah, I think that's the word you'd use to describe them, solid. I think for sure it's maybe a bit more positive than Kohlenhoff just because he has been dealing with Epstein-Barr virus, and it's very, very difficult to deal with that. And hopefully with that fifth overall, fifth, the second moto was very good actually, considering the sort of speed he has had recently with the illness. So hopefully that can be him on the way back now, and we can see the real Jeremy Sear, because it's quite sad to see him riding around in those positions actually, because the last 3 years or 2 years anyway, he's finished second in the world, and he's not quite at the races compared to those years at the moment. And just on Kohlenhoff, yeah, not bad. You still do expect a little bit more from Kohlenhoff, I think, but solid and maybe at a track that isn't his favourite cup of tea. So 6th overall isn't the end of the world, and 8th in the championship. He'll be wanting to try and improve on that as the season progresses for sure.
And just for Jeremy Stewart fans, he's actually 6th in the championship still, despite all these health issues he's had. As usual, he still managed to be consistent. Not maybe the top 5 consistency that he had in previous years and podiums, but his consistency still has him in 6th, just ahead actually of Paul's Jonas. So that could be a bit of a battle for 6th overall come down the end of the championship. Sticking with Yamaha, Ben Watson, 10th in the championship, 11th overall. He is in a bit of a battle to stay in that top 10. Lupino's 3 points in front of them. Brian Bogers, Thomas Kjær-Olsen, Calvin Valandren are all around 15 points back of him. It's all pretty close there, everybody within about 20 points. So that's something to keep an eye on as the end of the season comes as well. But Ben Watson, an article with Adam Wheeler on our website, has pointed to the fact that he might not be with Yamaha next season, and it could be Maxime Renault, who we'll get on to later in MX2, looking likely to be world champion this year in the MX2 division, could be taking his place. For me, that's a wee bit surprising on 2 levels. First of all, aside from a couple of hard pack shockers in Russia and Turkey, Ben for me's had a solid season, and with the sand races he's been really good. To be battling for that top 10 overall would probably be what you would have expected from him as a good first year. And Renault, I thought maybe if he's another year left, he maybe would have stayed down to defend the title. The Rush MXGP is a very tough championship, as we've all seen. You kind of have to be 100% ready for when you get into that class. So is Renault ready? Maybe he is, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. It's a big decision for Yamaha, because Ben, you might feel like he's been a bit hard done by there.
Yeah, just on his weekend, first of all, I have to say I was quite worried for him after qualifying. I think he was outside the top 20th or something.
Yeah,
and you're thinking, oh no, not again. But actually, the more track time he got, the better he got, which is positive to see. 13th and 8th, progression throughout the whole weekend. 11th overall, a track like that, I think is very good for Watson. And just on the situation, I mean, 10th as a rookie in MXGP is really, really good. But if they were going to get rid of him with those results, I just find what was the point in signing him in the first place? That's my question, because you can't expect him to do much more as a rookie, in my opinion, in that class. And if you're a Yamaha, it does suit to keep Maxime Renault down in MX2 until he ages out, because he's going to, well, barring a complete disaster or a big injury, he's going to win the championship this year. He looks to be getting better and better as a factory rider, and this is his first full year as a full factory rider in MX2. So I feel like another year in MX2 wouldn't do any harm at all. And if it all goes to plan, he might even have to move up the end of 2022 due to winning 2 titles in a row. So if I was Yamaha, I'd be trying to get Maxime to stay on MX2, go for that title with him or Gertz next year, and then you've got the young Benny Stunt who's improving all the time, and then make a decision in MXGP regarding if you keep Watson or sign somebody else. Personally, I think Watson's done what's been asked of him this year and more, so I don't think he can be too disappointed. But I feel like Kawasaki are going to be sniffing on his door. I've heard that they're interested, so be interesting to see if Ice One Kawasaki, even though that's not official yet, it's pretty bad kept secret at this stage, will sign Watson.
Yeah, I think he does deserve a good team to go to if that can all be sorted and contracts agreed and money and everything like that. I think he's done enough to earn another shot on a factory bike. You just hope with the change of environment, bike and team that all gels with him, because it looks like not everybody's gelling with the Yamaha. We've seen Coldenhoff's taking a bit of time, but I think Ben, from he got on the 250 Yamaha and going to this 450, he seems to have gelled with that bike. So whatever team he does go to next year, let's hope he can gel with the bike early, because it's probably going to be quite a big year for him if he was already in a bit of a dicey situation this year.
Absolutely, and there's a bit more pressure on him next year too, because he won't be the rookie anymore, and he'll be looking to be eliminate those bad rounds that he has had this year in the slick hard pack track. So that'll be the area we want to see him improve in next year, and then keep up the good sand racing. But MXGP is crazy. Like, the top 5 is mental. Obviously, you've got Crowley retiring, but that's only one guy that's not going to be there next year. So it's very, very difficult. Everybody's really, really fast, but I feel like he's as a second or third rider in a factory team is a very good option, and that's why I think he's a very good fit for Yamaha, because actually as a third rider, he's exactly what you want. For them to have 3 riders in the top 10 of MXGP is very, very positive, and actually he's not been the disappointing one in terms of championship rankings this year, you would say. They spent a lot of money in Coldenhoff, obviously a very, very good rider, but he's needed that year to adapt the bike, and for him only to be 2 spots ahead of Watson on paper isn't great. Obviously, Sear's had his issues, but hopefully he'll be back to the Sear we all know next year as well.
Well, that's it. You look at the championship, obviously you've Geiser, Herlings, Fever, Prado and Crowley, the top 5, and they're kind of on a level above. And behind them you have Watson's teammate Jeremy Sear, who you would expect kind of to be into that thing, but as you mentioned, has his illnesses. Paul Jonas has been very fast this year, had a couple of DNFs, has hurt his overall, but he's 7th. Not a guy you would probably expect Watson to come straight in and beat. Glenn Coltonhoff the same. He was signed probably to get in amongst that top 5 and go for a title. So the only rider maybe you look in the top 10 that Watson should be ahead of is Alex Lupino, who isn't on a factory bike, but is a very experienced and talented rider, and has had one of the best seasons probably he's had in MXGP, and even he's only 3 points ahead of Watson. So really, what else, as you said, I'm not sure what else Ben could really have done this year. He's probably maximised what he was supposed to do.
Exactly, and if this was always Yamaha's thinking from the get-go, it's maybe not even fair in Watson. Maybe initially what they should have done is put him on a satellite team, and then that he would have been comfortable there, and then he would have stayed there for longer than the first year. But obviously Watson would have been grateful to have a factory bike as a rookie, because that's the best equipment possible. So there's also that side of it. But yeah, let's see what the future brings with Ben. But hopefully he can end the season strongly. And I do think he has a fight to face to keep that top 10 spot. But we'll see how he can perform in the up and coming GPs.
On a positive for Beta, Jeremy Van Horbach, 10th overall, much more like the Van Horbach at the start of the season. He skipped the designations to do some testing, and the bike, he looked really comfortable on the machine. Obviously, he's a very good hard pack rider. Germany does suit him, but nice to see Van Horbach on the Beta back up front. He's 14th in the championship and top 15 in that class for a brand new bike. And they've had some issues, obviously, in sand races recently. Not too bad at all, but nice to see that performance step back up again as we get to the end of the season.
Absolutely. A few tough GPs, you would say, for Beta and Jeremy Van Horbach. So nice to see them back in the top 10, which is unbelievable work, really, for a new manufacturer. And it's nice to see that Jeremy Van Horbach's still motivated. He's obviously still putting in the work, to be able to run that speed and have that fitness. And yeah, at a track that suits him well, but even still, 10-9th, really good work. And it looks like Alessandro Lupino is going to be his teammate next year at Beta as well. So that's a pretty nice lineup heading into 2022. And I know that the Van Horbach has been doing a lot of testing in the 2022 Beta recently. So hopefully the bike can be even better next year, and we can see them in the top 10 on a more consistent basis, and maybe even their good days they can get in that top 5 occasionally.
Yeah, I think that move for Lupino, if everything goes to plan, should actually be quite good for him. The bike's pretty proven now with Van Horbach. Lupino's in and around that level, and obviously Van Horbach's been the only guy that's really been able to bring the results for the Beta team this year, with Jimmy Clochet not quite delivering probably what everyone hoped he would. And Lupino has experience. He's raced a lot of bikes in the World Championship, MX2 and MXGP. So 2 experienced guys there, 2 guys that have the capability of getting results. And for Lupino to get a factory team, yes, it's Beta, but Beta's now a lot more proven than it was when Jeremy Van Horbach signed. So that should be a good match all around, I think. All being well anyway.
Absolutely. And also we'll have to say what a good job Beta are doing, because Jeremy Van Hoorbeek is on pretty good money, and I believe that Lupino is going to be on pretty good money. So for people that think, oh, there's not a lot of money in MXGP, this, that, and the other, they're two good experienced guys, and they're getting good money. So, and they're not, the elite top five guys. So it does go to show there's money to be made. And fair play to Beta, they've been doing a good job. Hopefully, we can see them in the paddock for many years to come.
And a shout out for another of the old guard, Kevin Strybus, 13th overall. He's had his ups and downs, but his ups have been good this year. Definitely shows he still has it whenever he's feeling the flow and feeling comfortable with the track. I did read on his Instagram that he wasn't too happy with how the whole Belgium situation went down. He was asked that to go on the team, then not go on the team, and then they wanted him back on the team, and he eventually turned the second invitation down. So maybe he felt he was a wee bit aggrieved with that whole situation, but he's come back in 13th overall. Again, for Kevin Strybus, he's doing enough to justify his position in the team there.
Yeah, he hasn't rode a bike since Riola because he's had health issues. So to not ride a bike for 2 weeks and then go 15-12 and have his best GP in a couple of weeks, good job, you would say. I'm not sure you can expect much more having not rode a bike for 2 weeks. So good work, 13th overall. And he was able to get a good start, which isn't like him. And that Gavin Yamaha, his starts haven't been good at all this year. So positive weekend, and he'll look to build on this as the season progresses. It does sound like this could be his last year in MXGP. So if that is indeed the case, let's hope he can just enjoy the last GPs, because what a career he's had. Phenomenal, really, and the longevity of him as well, really, really good.
Yeah, and that's why it's still nice to see him putting in these performances. You might think, looking back in his career, that he maybe should have had a world title to his name. Things don't always go your way, but he stayed at it and showed that longevity, and showed that at his age, not on factory equipment, he still has the motivation and the talent to go out and get good results. He actually beat Alberto Ferrado, who was sixth a couple of weeks ago, but Ferrado 14th, still not too bad for him, top 15 overall.
Yeah, absolutely, not too bad at all. Rookie, learning the ropes on his SM action, gas. Don't think you can complain too much. Obviously, sixth is unbelievable, but it's going to be hard to finish there every week with how stacked the class is. So it's all about learning as much as he can this year for Prado, and because he's one rider that has a lot of potential for the future, I feel.
And Sean Simpson, 19th overall, I'm sure his thumb didn't feel too good around those ruts in the hard pack in Germany. Still 2-point scoring rides for him. And Josh Gilbert, really good to see Josh back and doing some MXGPs. He had a very good British Championship season, showed a lot of pace. But I think to go to that next level, if I can put my teeth in, he has to do these GPs, get used to that pace and that intensity. Points, 20th overall, has to be a good weekend for him. But I think he has good talent, and hopefully the more he does, the more comfortable he can get with the pace and the intensity for full race distance. And next year, obviously, back to normal full weekend.
Absolutely, that's what it's all about. Doing as many of these wildcard MXGP events as you can to learn as much as possible. That's a very, very tough track, I feel, especially for a Brit that only races British Championships. Not too many tracks on the British Championship calendar like that. Maybe Foxhill would be about the only one off the top of my head, but even it's quite a bit different to Germany. So riding those type of tracks is what's going to make him a better rider. So hopefully he can do plenty next year as well. Just on Sean, yeah, not an ideal track, and even when he's 100% fit for Sean, I feel. So not a great day for him, but hopefully the thumbs heals up as soon as possible, and we can see him in the top 15 at least.
Right, let's move on to MX2. More drama there, although more off the track than on it. First of all, let's go by the on-track results. Tom Vial, he went 1-1. Let's not get the penalty for not jumping on, or for jumping on a yellow flag in the way of what actually happened on the track. Two great rides for Tom Vial. The first one, Rene Hofer rode fantastic to hold Vial off for 20 minutes, and then actually stayed on Vial's back wheel right up to the end with Renault pushing him. So that was a good moto, but Vial did this. You've always felt he still had the control there. And again, in the second one, Renault kept him honest, but Vial, it just felt he always had more. Renault had really got close onto his back wheel. But then we had the drama. Yamaha protested for Vial jumping on yellow flags. Vial was furious. I wonder if he lost his bonus from KTM for that win as well. And Renault took the win. Said he didn't like to win like that, but then also mentioned that he lost time whenever Vial did that jump. So I'm not sure so how much he weights the disappointment with the joy of winning and probably that bonus. So that'll be interesting. Maybe a wee bit of tension there, which could keep the individual races for the rest of the season pretty interesting between the two French guys.
Maybe, but also maybe not. You know, Renault's got an 85 championship points lead now, and actually up to the stage he has been pushing to go for these moto wins, but with 10 or 15 minutes to go in that second moto, you could just tell I'm not going to go after Vial here. What's the point? And this because there's a championship on the line, and I feel like this could happen quite a lot in MX2 between now and the rest of the year, because you know the big picture for Renault is to get this championship, and he won't want to take unnecessary risks. So probably what we need is 100% Jago Gertz to be up there with Vial, and hopefully it can be a bit like last year, because those two had a lot of battles last year. Obviously this year not too much, but considering how bad Gertz has been for his standards, still to be second in the championship isn't too bad under the circumstances. So hopefully he can end the season 100%, get a few wins or battle with Vial. That can be the good racing, because aside from Real and Gertz, it's hard to see who can really challenge Vial at the moment, to be honest. Fantastic rider and very underrated.
Vial's only 41 points off Gertz in second, amazingly, despite missing 3 rounds in a row and a DNF in Czech. So for him to give him another couple of races, France next week, of course. So Renault might want to hold off on not trying to go for those moto wins, because they probably want to beat Vial at home. But that remains to be seen. As you say, he actually mentioned whenever Vial did that jump, that Renault said he jumped on the yellows. Renault didn't, and that gave Vial the gap that Renault said he just give up. So he could be right there, and where he's assessing situations to where if he's right on Vial and he has the pace, he'll keep going. But if he feels the gap's too big, there's no point riding over his head to win it. So starts in those two coming out 1-2 in France or Spain in the next couple of weeks could be pivotal. But it looks like Renault could win the championship with a round or two to go. So there still might be a bit of room for an all-out battle for those two. So to me, that's still something to keep an eye on. Jago Gertz, the last round probably summed up the season overall. Okay, not bad, quite good, but not to his normal level. He decent starts, decent speed, but just didn't have the pace to go with the front guys.
Yeah, pretty much, but it is progress, so that's something, and it is at a track that you wouldn't really associate Jago Gertz with. So I think even at his best level, a podium would have been good. So just to miss out isn't completely the end of the world. But in terms of the championship, it actually ended up not bad at all, because he's moved into second now, and he's actually gained. He's put 12 points between himself and Guarnini, who had a terrible day. So in that respect, it's not too bad. And I do feel like for Gertz, it was important just to get into that second place and then just sort of try and go for it in terms of getting some wins or at least getting on the podium. So it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the season holds for him. But just on Rene Hofer, he was fantastic at the weekend. Finally, he's on the podium. I feel like he's been knocking on the door for it for a while. So it's nice to see him unlock his potential with a 2-4 at the kind of track that you would associate with him. And it was good to see him put it all together, really, and get on the podium, because he's very, very talented.
Yeah, it was really good to see. As impressive as the first moto was, the second moto impressed me as well, that he was able to fight through to get up to fourth to secure that podium ahead of Gertz. So he kind of done it both ways there, which proves that the speed and the fitness and all of that starting to come together now, the confidence as well from that injury. And to lead Vial for 20 minutes, who's probably the fastest and best MX2 rider in the world, although Maxime Renault might not agree with that right now. But for Hofer to do that, it's got to give him a whole load of confidence as well, because it wasn't like Vial was just sitting there waiting. He was trying to get past. And then to stay with Vial at the end, it must have ticked a lot of boxes for Hofer in terms of confidence and self-belief.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. I feel like he's made a step this last couple of weeks, especially at Raiola. He was really impressing me in that first moto. he was running comfortably in the top 5, but then unfortunately the crash came after I jinxed him. So what can you do about that? Not much if you're Rennie Hoffer. But yeah, it was nice to see him deliver the goods in the hard pack track that would do associate him with him, with his riding style and technique, and it's an Austrian kind of track. So now the question for him is, can he get any more podiums between now and the end of the season? That's what it's all about.
You would imagine that's what he'll be looking for now. He knows he can do it in the hard pack, and that'll have to be his goal from here on out. But the Husqvarna boys, 5-6, Jed beating Kai de Wolf. Kai de Wolf was blisteringly fast in practice and qualifying. Maybe he didn't quite get the results that he had in the morning one lap events, but still decent for him. I feel his hard pack's improving week by week, round by round, and Jed beating, good steady performance for him. But I would imagine he's looking more podiums as well for the end of the season.
Yeah, Kai de Wolf, this is actually a track that he tends to maybe struggle at, so I wasn't sure what to expect from him this weekend, but 8-6, very, very solid, very consistent, and a step in the right direction. It looked like he enjoyed the track, so that's a positive, because obviously in the World Championship you need to be able to ride all different terrains and all different tracks, so I think that's something he's accepted and he's working hard at improving. So very solid day to be 6th overall. And don't forget when he turned 17 last week, so one of the youngest riders in the class. Jet beaten, solid. If it's, I feel like I feel like Germany was sort of summed up the season, solid but nothing completely spectacular. 4-5 for 5th, and he's 4th overall in the championship. But I feel like I expected maybe a little bit more from Jed this year, only because I do rate him so highly. He's sort of 4th in the championship because of his consistency, but I thought he might have been more of a race winner this year, to be honest. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get closer to the guys at the front between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, he's always quite close. He's close enough there at times in motos and races that you think you have a wee bit of hope that he's gonna get those wins and get more consistent podiums, which I'm sure he thinks as well. And it sometimes does happen, and sometimes he's just a wee bit off that top 3 or going for that race win. So it might be a wee bit frustrating for him that he's actually so close to just almost a wee bit like Febvre getting the race wins in MXGP. Beaton's there for podiums, and sometimes you think he could maybe just get those couple of race wins. He gets a start, he's looking good, and maybe a crash or he gets caught up in someone else's mistake. Those things seem to have happened to him as well this year.
Yeah, and then of course there's the thing of how good Tom Vial and Maxime Renault have been. That's also a problem for somebody like Beaton. He's obviously very fast himself, but those two just seem to be really on another level this year. It's been very, very impressive. So we'll be interesting to see if, aside from Gertz, if anyone else can close that gap between those two, and maybe Gertz and Guadagnini, of course, between now and the rest of the season. But Beaton could certainly be the one to do it.
The back end of the top 10, I think all these guys will be relatively happy. Simon Langenfelder, home Grand Prix, obviously, hasn't maybe had the form that he had at the start of the season. He had a couple of good starts. 7th overall, maybe would have been gunning for that top 5, but overall not a bad day for him, I thought.
Yeah, not bad at all. It was nice to, I think his riding's been relatively quite good lately, but in terms of results, they took a bit of a dip. So I think it was just important for him to post a good result again. So even though his riding wasn't unbelievable like we've seen from him in the past, he did get good starts and he was able to put himself in a good position that helps. Maybe he had a bit of pressure riding at home as well, something he's maybe not used to, because of course he missed the whole season last year pretty much. So this is really his rookie year, to be honest. So 6-11, very solid, 7th overall, the exact result he needed after a few tough ones.
And Conrad Mewes, he was phenomenal in that first race. Usually bad start, Conrad isn't always the greatest at passing a lot of riders, but he was he was just passing people like they weren't there at Teutschenthal, and it was difficult to pass. To get through to 7th, he was on a mission. He's probably wishing he had the start in that moto, because he certainly had the flow. Then the second moto, another bad start and just out of the top 10, but 8th overall in that first moto. Again, an indicator of just how good Conrad Mewes can be when everything's clicking for him.
Absolutely, and at the same time, very confusing. Usually when he gets a bad start, he can't pass riders at the best of times, and the toughest track on the calendar to pass at, and he's flying past guys left, right, and centre. The team must have told him it was a British Championship before that first moto because he was absolutely on rails, fantastic. You were thinking this is it, this is Conrad Mewes, and it's just a pity he didn't have the start. But they come from, I think it was outside the top 20 to seventh, was a phenomenal ride really, and I mean, he had the fastest lap time of the race, and for 3 or 4 laps in a row, he was the fastest on the track. So you can't take that away from him. And I think this is why Conrad Mewes is so frustrating because now and again he will remind us of how talented he is, and that was one of those moments. The second moto, he rode well. He didn't ride bad, but again, it wasn't the performance he had in the first moto that we all know he can do. So even though it was a good weekend, 7-12, you're still kind of like, if only he could ride the way he rode in the first moto all the time, it'd be phenomenal.
And Michael Harrop, in some ways, a wee bit similar to Muse, has a lot of pace, has a lot of talent, but the last few GPs maybe been a wee bit tough for him. This time he looked good, ninth overall, back more towards the sharp end. Probably better starts, didn't do him any harm either. But he looked aggressive, he looked on the pace. Great ride for him, and also Stefan Rubini. Really good to see him back in the top 10. He's had a very tough year, but that's got to give him a lot of confidence.
Yeah, just on her app, actually, very similar to Muse, but only you reverse the motos really. And in the first moto, it was Muse coming from outside the top 20 to seventh, and in the second moto, it was her app that came from outside the top 20 to eighth. And I feel like that was very much needed for her app after a few tough GPs with crashes and things like that. So that should do him the world of good. And obviously, he'll, he'll not be at F1H Kawasaki next year. So he's on the lookout for a ride, and that'll do his harm. No, that'll do his chances of a good ride good. So I don't even know what to say there, but yeah, really good and needed ninth overall. Hopefully he can continue this form. But I was watching the start of the second moto, and that F&H Kawasaki out of the gate got absolutely smoked. So hopefully they can work on getting starts, whether it's him or the bike, I'm not sure, but hopefully they can get good starts between now and the end of the season. And with Rubini, he has had knee issues, I believe, so it's been a frustrating year for him, not being able to really show what he's capable of, but that was definitely a step in the right direction at a track that he's got good results at before. So 9th, 13th for his first top 10 overall this season is encouraging.
Guadney and Beniston, and maybe these two rookies have been so impressive this season, but maybe their worst GP of the year as a duo. Nothing seemed to go right for either of them with crashes. I think their speed was actually good, but nothing else really came together for them. And Wilson Todd, 14th overall DNF in the first one, but he rode really good. I think seventh in the second one. Definitely very impressive for me, Wilson Todd, this season.
Yeah, Wilson Todd seems to be getting better and better at the moment. Start of the season, you sort of weren't sure where he was going to be, and especially because he was only on a stock bike then. But he's obviously got an upgrade since then. The bike seems to be working well. He seems to get better all the time in this class, which is good to see. Shame about the DNF in the first moto, but seventh in the second moto was very, very impressive, and be interesting to see if he can keep how many top 10 results he can get between now and the end of the season. And on the two rookies, yeah, you're right. Benny Stanton especially. I think he went over the handlebars twice, so a day for him just to forget really and forget it even happened and move on with the rest of the season. And Gordonini, who's been unbelievable this year, shouldn't be too hard on himself either because he's been a revelation this year. And even though he's lost points on Gertz in the championship, for him still to be third's astonishing, really.
Just quickly, Gianluca Facchetti obviously changed teams. Bit controversial the way he had to leave Honda. But he's on KTM, 16th in the second moto. He had a really good qualifying a couple of rounds ago. Is he starting maybe to show a weight of potential again, or what do you think?
I mean, he certainly has speed, but in terms of having that speed for 30 minutes plus five, I think that's sort of always been his issue, especially since the car crash and stuff. So it's a difficult one. It's hard to know with Facchetti. I think he'll probably always be a 15 to 20 guy in MX2 because of those limitations I mentioned. But if he can get the fitness sorted, who knows? Because he has got a lot of speed there.
Right, let's quickly go to EMX. First of all, EMX 125 and the Belgian Ricky Carmichael. Sasha Conan, unbelievable. For me, this kid could, if, as long as he doesn't get badly injured, because he rides the edge a wee bit, but he isn't scared. He looks like Ricky on the bike. He's like Herlings and Carmichael, pretty similar, just goes for it, but he's the statue of Carmichael. Doesn't seem to care, isn't intimidated by anyone. He had, with Osterhagen not there, he had the chance to win. It looked like he was going to win the first moto. Should have won the first moto, but a silly crash landed on his head upside down in a rut. Yet again, keeping up the spectacular crash streak, and then comes back second moto and just obliterates everyone. This kid for me has it, and if you want to win world championships, you better start getting them done now if you're one of the other younger riders, because he looks like he could be a bit of a tornado coming through when he gets into the world championship level, as long as he stays fit.
You love this kid.
You really he's do. Fantastic.
No,
he
is really. No, he is. He's great. He's great to watch, but he needs to really stop crashing. Once he stops crashing, I'll be completely on the bandwagon too. But I find it a bit frustrating at the minute because I mean he could have the red plate now if it wasn't for all these crashes. But hopefully the penny drops soon and he can be consistent and fast. And who knows, the future is very, very bright for him. But a shout out to his brother Lucas Conan actually, because a lot of the time in the French nationals, Lucas is actually able to beat Sasha, but for whatever reason, when they race around Europe, it's not necessarily the case. So it was nice for him actually to have that consistency and get on a podium with a 4-3 and go third overall, because I feel like he has a lot of talent as well.
He seems a bit smoother and a bit more consistent. Sasha seems to not have developed any fear yet, and he's just like, I'm going to go win. Lucas seems a wee bit more measured in what he does.
Yeah, pretty much. Hit the nail on the head there, but it is quite funny that Lucas is able to beat Sasha quite a lot in France, so I wonder if it's a mental thing when he gets to MX or not, but you know, they're both still young. They'll have a lot of time to work on it, but the future could be bright for the pair of them.
Yeah, and Belgium as well. You have both of them coming. For a while, you started wondering where Belgium motocross was going to go, but you have the two of them. You've Liam Everts. Obviously, Jago is still young as well, and I would say none of those four have obviously hit their potential yet, not even Jago. So motocross to nations for Team Belgium. They still nearly made the podium this year with what you would say was a B team. So give them 2 or 3 years and good hope there. Also, Ivano Van Erp, really nice to see him take the overall win with the first place in the first moto, fourth place in race 2, and Bobby Bruce. He's really shown he's the real deal from the UK. Doesn't matter what the tracker conditions are. He's up there now in a very competitive class, second overall. Great results for him.
Yeah, I mean, Ivano Van Erp, where the flip did that come from? He hasn't, obviously he has had speed this year, but he hasn't had a top 10 overall result. So to not have that and then to go out and win the overall at a track that isn't exactly a Dutch kind of track, very, very impressive. I certainly wasn't expecting that. 1-4, first overall, first win in the MX 125 championship. This kid, I've always thought, does have a lot of potential, but because he moved up to the 125 so early and he wasn't really the right size for the bike, the results never really showed. But I feel like watching him in Germany, it looked like he's the right size for the bike now. So it could be interesting to see what he can do between now and the rest of the season, now that he believes he can win because he's actually done it. But he has had a few crashes this season, a bit like Conan actually. So hopefully he can keep it in 2 wheels as well. And Bobby Bruce, one of the more experienced riders in the class, but it's great to see him actually, instead of moving up to the 250, it's actually great to see him in this class just to learn the tracks and to try and battle for a championship really. And he's not going to be far away, 3 points off the talented Valerio Lata. And he's been very, very consistent. His experience could end up helping him win this championship.
I think I maybe slightly jinxed Lada after the first moto. I was watching he's relatively unspectacular. He's obviously fast, but he doesn't blow you away with blistering race wins like Osterhagen or Conan can do. And then he ended up crashing twice, I think, in the second moto and just blew that theory out the window. But he's still leading the championship. But as you say, it's very close. Kai Karsbacher's actually is on 95 points, 7 back and fourth. But I expected him to have a slightly better day in Germany, did you?
Well, he crashed in both motos because I think he was behind Bobby in the first one, right behind him, and then he crashed. And then the second one, I expected a little bit better. I think he was seventh or eighth, and then crashed back to ninth. So I feel like his riding and his speed was okay, but just two crashes hindered him in the results. Eighth overall isn't unbelievable. It's quite average actually for Kajmakers, but he's still only 7 points off in the championship chase, so anything is possible. And what I would say is for all these Dutch talents, they might not like the fact that there's no sand races in the MX125 Championship, but what it will do is it will make them better in hardpack, which is exactly what they need. So, in terms of improving them as riders for the future, this is actually exactly what they needed.
Yeah, and I think the very last round maybe mounted it. Funny enough, there's actually only been 3 rounds of this championship. You kind of think the World Championship's getting to the end of the season, but these guys have still 6 rounds, if I've counted right, 6 rounds left. So, as things stand, Karsmakers is right there, eighth overall, not the best or what he would have looked for, but it almost doesn't really matter. It's that close. And Conan, he's really learning quickly. That's a race win already, 2 big crashes already, and he's pretty close to the championship as well. So a lot of things could start unfolding. There's only 3 rounds in. These guys are really just getting warmed up now, and they're going to have momentum now, race after race, quite quickly coming up. So this could be a very exciting and competitive championship to keep an eye on for the rest of the year.
Exactly, I think it will be. They're all young guns, young and dumb, as you could call them, because they just go out and pin it and send it every week, and the brains go out the window. So that's why it's so great to watch, and the two strokes as well. It should be an exciting championship, and hopefully it can stay a relatively close action and go down to the wire, because it makes it more exciting for anybody, really.
Yeah, that should be an exciting one to watch, especially with us to hang it out at the minute. These guys who haven't maybe had the race wins, now they're getting a shot at that, and it's going to be who can probably keep their composure. But EMX 250, Nicholas Lapucci won both motos, but maybe for the first time all season, he looked like he had a wee bit of weakness, and yet he still found a way to keep the lead, keep fighting. He said he injured his foot, I think it was, in practice. It didn't quite look, he was making a wee bit more mistakes than normal, didn't maybe have that aggression that he normally has, still pulled out the 1-1. So actually, in a bizarre way, really impressive for Lapucci to still be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it was his foot or his leg. I think he injured, and he rode the last round of the Italian Champ with it, and won the Italian Championship, and then obviously came and done the EMX. So from the outside, looking at the results, you wouldn't actually think he's riding with any injury at all, with the results still being very, very positive. But really good weekend. I think that Fantic out of the gate is definitely a big benefit. He's getting pretty much every hole shot, and when you position yourself so well, it makes life a lot easier. But the riding's obviously very good as well. Considering he's not 100%, you can't ask for anything more than to go 1-1, extend your championship lead, 32 points now. A very, very, very strong favourite for this title.
Kevin Hormo, good day for him. Also, Andrea Bonacorzi finally on the podium. I had expected a wee bit more maybe from him this year, but great to see that podium. He could be a guy now that really comes on strong. But before you even comment on those, Rick Elzinga, that first moto, he was absolutely flying. I thought he was going to get the win. His lines were really good. The momentum he had was really good. He passed people to get the second. Caught Lapucci, just couldn't get that final pass he needed to win, and then a crash in the second moto kind of ended all his hopes of an overall victory. But his speed, his aggression, his line choice, everything was flowing for Rick, especially that first moto.
Yeah, coming into France, I wasn't actually really that sure what to expect from Elzinga, because we all know he can ride sand, but in terms of hard pack, we've never really seen him have an outstanding hard pack ride. So I really wanted him to show me that this weekend, and that's exactly what he done. I would say that first moto was maybe the best ride of his career, only because it was in hard pack and he was absolutely the fastest guy. It's just such a pity the track was so hard to pass. He just couldn't find a way past Lapucci, but no doubt about it, in that first moto he was the fastest guy. In the second moto he obviously had that crash and he just never really seemed to recover from it, which is a bit of a shame. But overall, he'd probably be disappointed to miss out in the podium due to the speed he had. But I think he should just be happy that he was able to ride like that in hard pack, and that should actually give him a lot of confidence now moving to the more hard pack tracks.
Oh. And Tom Guyon, fifth overall, good for him. He's been a bit hit and miss this year, so nice to see him back more towards the front. And Liam Everts, he actually rode really well, came from the back as well. So to salvage a sixth overall, it maybe doesn't look as good on paper after his recent performance at the Nations at MX2. But I think his riding was fine. There was no problem with that, and he was able to move forward. So shout out to those two guys. And also Jeremy Sito back, and he was fast, but he got a hole shot. I think it was the first race, and it looked like he almost shouldn't have had that hole shot because everything started happening really fast for him. He didn't have a chance to get into his rhythm. Give him a couple of rounds, and he's got that back on a hole shot. Maybe he goes and starts battling for the win, but it almost like he wasn't ready for the hole shot there. But still, seventh overall, home GP for him as well. Not pretty impressive return actually.
Yeah, the Hoot and Metal Yamaha team haven't had maybe the season they've expected. Obviously, it all before even round one with Jeremy Saido getting injured the week before and then being ruled out. It sort of has been a domino effect really, but it was really nice to see him back. He has got a lot of talent and he's a rider that with a lot of potential. So to have for his first race back to be seventh overall is a positive, and as he gets stronger and fitter and more race time in, he should definitely be a podium guy, that's for sure. And Andrea Bonacorzi, I feel like fifth as a rookie is very impressive actually, and already to be in the podium. I've actually been very impressed with him this season. I feel like maybe in other years he would be winning, but Lapucci and Horgmo are very, very fast. I think it's automatically a little bit harder for rookies this year because, I mean, those guys have dropped down from different championships to ride EMX 250, and they've got a bit more experience, a bit more class, and maybe a bit more speed than the rest. So I feel like Bonacorsi is actually doing really good things this year and should only continue to get better. And to be on the podium already, I think is a big positive for him. Tom Guyon is another one, similar to Saito. See, it all went wrong for Guyon's case, it was the first round when he broke his collarbone, so he lacked a bit of bike time after it. And for him to come back and be fifth overall is pretty decent, especially when the first moto, I think he came from last to 13th, and to back that up with the fourth, very good pace. And Everts was similar to Guyon the first moto, he was way back, so to come from 11th and back that up with a fifth solid at maybe a track that you wouldn't associate Everts with. So positive weekend for those two guys, like you said.
Yep, and that wraps up the German Grand Prix. Pretty dramatic GP. I think at certain times everybody's heart was flat, especially that first MXGP moto. Terrific racing and then a horrendous ending. But we're on to France, and can Prado first of all race, and will he be fit enough to run up front again and try and salvage his championship hopes? 31 points back. We'll have Tim Geiser fresh off a race win, Roman Favre home Grand Prix, Jeffrey Herlings. He can't let Geiser or Favre get much more confidence. He's going to have to hit back, so very exciting there. And of course with EMX 125 and EMX 250, always great racing for those two on the Saturday. So Andy, thanks again. We'll look forward to France and we'll speak to you next week. Thanks guys.
Thanks guys, all the best.